Good morning, Year 10s, and welcome to your English lesson. So as usual, we're going to start off with quiz. I'm going to read through the questions. You need to make sure you are getting something in your gaps, even if it's a guess. So make sure you're writing something down for each and every question. Number 1, describe the ghost of Christmas past. You get a bonus if you can provide a quote. Number 2, describe the ghost of Christmas present. Again, another bonus if you can provide a quote. Number 3, what does the word plague mean? And I'm asking for the verb. So last lesson in quiz, we talked about the word plague, and I said how it was a noun, but it was also a verb. If I talk about plaguing someone or someone being plagued by something in terms of the verb, what do I mean? Number 4, what does it mean if I say cut? Number 5, no wind that blew was bitterer than he, no falling snow was more intent upon its purpose, no pelting rain less open to entreaty. The word entreating, what is the best synonym? Is it A, contract, B, appeal, or C, entrance? Number 6, the heaviest rain and snow and hail and sleet could boast of the advantage over him in only one respect. They often came down handsomely, and Scrooge never did. What is the best synonym for handsomely? Is it A, impressively, B, hurtfully, or C, beautifully? Number 7, technique or meaning. This is the hag, when maids lie on their backs, that presses them and learns them first to bear, making them women of good carriage. Is that A, a metaphor, B, anaphora, or C, simile? And number 8, Romeo, peace, peace, Mercutio, peace. What is the technique? Is it A, a metaphor, B, alliteration, or C, repetition? Number 9, what is the word class for the word in bold? So no beggars implored him to bestow a trifle. The word bestow. No children asked him what it was o'clock. No man or woman ever once in all his life inquired the way to such and such a place of Scrooge. Bestow, is that A, an adjective, a describing word, B, a noun, a naming word, or C, a verb, a doing word? Number 10, even the blind man's dog appeared to know him, and when they saw him coming on would tug their owners into doorways and up courts, and then would wag their tails as though to say, no eye at all is better than an evil eye, dark master. Tug, is that A, a noun, a naming word, B, an adjective, a describing word, or C, a verb, a doing word? Make sure you have a guess in every single one of these questions. If you are not sure, if you are sure, make sure you've got your answer at the ready. Pause the video to complete this if you need more time. Okay, so I've just put quotes in here. So the ghost of Christmas past is described as like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man. So it's the ghost that shows him the kind of past. And then number 2, he's described as a jolly giant, glorious to see. The ghost of Christmas present, a jolly giant, a Hagrid, if you will, a jolly Hagrid. Number 3, plague. Verb means to cause continual trouble or distress to. So if you plague someone, it means you bother them over and over again. Cut is to make an opening or incision or wound in something with a sharp-edged tool or object. So to cut. You might have talked about like slicing things open, or you might have talked about kind of hurting, or anything like that is fine. Entreaty, the best synonym is B, appeal. Entreaty means kind of like to beg, so less open to entreaty. If someone is open to entreaty, it means they are willing to listen to your appeals or your requests. Number 6, the heaviest rain and snow and hail and sleet has one advantage. It's that they come down handsomely. Best synonym there is impressively. Number 7 is a metaphor. Number 8 is some repetition. We've got peace, peace, peace. 3 pieces, so a bit of repetition in there. Number 9, bestow is a verb, it's a doing word. Bestow is to kind of give or gift. And tug is also a verb, it means to kind of pull or yank. Okay, wonderful. So your title is, starting with this extract, explore how Dickens presents the ghosts in A Christmas Carol. You guessed it, this is going to be an exam question lesson. However, today's just going to be the planning. Tomorrow I'm going to get you to do the writing, mainly because I feel like I want you to spend a lot of time on the writing. I want the writing to be really good, and I worry that if I try and do the planning in this video and then say, right, now the video's over, write your answers aren't going to be very good, because you should only really be spending 55 minutes to an hour on a lesson. So we're just going to plan it. Now, what I've got here is the question. So Dickens' A Christmas Carol, read the following extract from chapter 1 and then answer the question that follows. In this extract, Scrooge is attributing Marley's appearance to indigestion. So starting with this extract, explore how Dickens presents the ghosts in A Christmas Carol is our question. So I'm going to read through it. As I'm reading through it, you may want to jot down certain quotes that jump out at you about things that you might use in your answer, quotes you might use. But we will kind of go through this together, the extract. It's the elsewhere that I'm going to want you to kind of work independently on. So, to sit staring at those fixed glades' eyes in silence for a moment would play, Scrooge felt, the very deuce with him. There was something very awful, too, in the spectre's being provided with an infernal atmosphere of its own. Scrooge could not feel it himself, but there was clearly the case, for though the ghost sat perfectly motionless, its hair and skirts and tassels were still agitated as by the hot vapour from an oven. "You see this toothpick?" said Scrooge, returning quickly to the charge, for the reason just assigned, and wishing, though it were only for a second, to divert the vision's stony gaze from him. "I do," replied the ghost. "You are not looking at it," said Scrooge. "But I see it," said the ghost, notwithstanding. "Well," returned Scrooge, "I have but to swallow this, and be for the rest of my days persecuted by a legion of goblins, all of my own creation. Humbug, I tell you, humbug!" At this the spirit raised a frightful cry, and shook its chain with such a dismal and appalling noise, that Scrooge held on tight to his chair to save himself from falling in a swoon. A swoon is like fainting. But how much greater was his horror when the phantom, taking off the bandage round its head, as if it were too warm to wear indoors, its lower jaw dropped down upon its breast. Okay, so you should have maybe been jotting down quotes, and if you want to pause the video just to take a few minutes to kind of pick out what you would choose to focus on, then I would recommend that you do that now. Okay. So here are the three kind of key bits that I would focus on in my own answer if I was to write one. And I'm just going to kind of explain why. So obviously in the extract, we're looking at three different kind of arguments, three different kind of points. So I've started off here with this idea of it having its own infernal atmosphere. Infernal being an adjective, telling us that it's horrible or terrible, and also very otherworldly, this idea that it's kind of being bothered by something out of this world that Scrooge can't experience. It has its own atmosphere. The ghost sat perfectly motionless. I could talk about this idea that the ghost is still. I could talk about the adverb there of perfectly. And then the adjective motionless to relate to the word still. But it's hair and skirts and tassels, and that's a nice little triplet. You know, three specific things are still agitated, and this word agitated is quite nice. It kind of means bothered. Or annoyed, as if by the hot vapour from an oven. And, you know, I might choose to think about this idea, and we've got this simile here, this comparison, and I might choose to think about the idea of hot and kind of the connotations of hell from that, the hot vapour of an oven. But this idea that the Scrooge is definitely otherworldly, I might think about the supernatural here. Dickens is trying to make it really clear to the reader, and this is the first ghost that the reader is introduced to, and Dickens is really trying to make it clear that this is a very supernatural kind of character. This is a ghost story. Then down here, the tone is kind of different. So we have this kind of initial like fear or creation of fear and the supernatural, and then it kind of changes a little bit as Scrooge kind of tries to suggest that it's all kind of a joke. So, "Well," returned Scrooge, "I have but to swallow this toothpick and be the rest of my days persecuted by a legion of goblins." This idea that Scrooge doesn't believe it. And this idea that he's almost making a joke of it, this legion of goblins. It's kind of a joke. He's kind of trying to create humour but it doesn't really work. I tell you humbug, and then I definitely zoom in on the exclamatory here. It kind of makes it seem like Scrooge thinks this whole thing is ridiculous. So it's this idea that Scrooge doesn't believe. And I think that's really important for Dickens to do. It's really important that he kind of brings in this idea of this is ridiculous, this is something not to believe in, because it actually makes it more terrifying when Scrooge does believe. So once Scrooge accepts the reality of the ghosts, it becomes a lot more terrifying. And then the final thing I would look at is this bit here, which is about creating that fear, that terror. I'm just going to do this in red rather than yellow, just so it's clearer to see. But he raised a frightful cry. I would definitely look at that adjective, and the word frightful meaning like terrifying, horrifying, thinking about words that basically mean scary. Dismal and appalling noise. It's kind of, it's what he's hearing is horrific. Again, adjectives. And you could maybe link the kind of sound to it being otherworldly or supernatural as well. Falling into a swoon. If we think about that noun, swoon, meaning to faint. Okay, Scrooge is so terrified, he's got the potential to kind of like pass out, as it were. He's so scared. Taking off the bandage from round its head, its lower jaw dropped down upon its breast. We've got a little bit of alliteration here with the dropped down. Okay, and then again, another little exclamation mark. The exclamatory. This scene is meant to be kind of horrifying or terrifying. It's meant to create extreme fear. Scrooge is meant to be afraid. The reader is meant to be afraid. You are meant to feel really, really scared by the appearance of this ghost. So these are the three things I would talk about, and I'm just going to highlight for you what I would make, not erase, I'm going to highlight for you what I would make the key points of each of my paragraphs. So one of my paragraphs would definitely about how he's trying to create this, presenting the ghosts as supernatural. He doesn't want them to just seem like kind of ordinary people that Scrooge encounters. He wants them to seem otherworldly and supernatural. But we also want it to kind of seem, he also, in this chunk at least, he wants it to seem unbelievable. So this idea of disbelief. He wants to create that disbelief, because as a reader, especially if you don't believe in ghosts, this might not have any effect on you if you are simply sitting there thinking, well, I just don't believe this. And it's important that you see your disbelief reflected in Scrooge, and then suddenly, oh, wait a second, it's actually really terrifying. And that would be my final paragraph, is that Dickens is trying to present the ghosts as terrifying, as horrifying. He wants them to be scary. This is a ghost story after all. So those are my 3 points. With my 3 sets of quotes, I might simply use specific words or specific phrases, but these would be the extracts that I would look at, and I've got my techniques and my word classes all kind of highlighted. Now, what you need to do is you need to transfer this into your plan. So I'm just going to show you how plans can look. Now, I'm very aware that there are at the moment 2 different styles of planning circulating the Year 10 English department. And I just want to assure you that they're exactly the same. The boxes are just in different places. So If this is the plan you are used to, can you copy this plan down now? So you need to have keyword from the question and synonyms as your first box. You need to have an introduction and a conclusion box. You need to have 3 extract boxes and 3 elsewhere boxes. You need to do this landscape on an A4 piece of paper, but you just, or on a computer, in a table, I don't mind. But you need to get this down so that you have this plan. Pause the video now if you need time to do that. The other version of the plan, and you can see this one is slightly filled in because this is the one that I use and I have used when planning this question. I put the keyword from the question and synonyms box in the centre. I put the introduction above that, the conclusion below, and then I have my extract on one side and my elsewhere on the other. Now, essentially what you now need to do is, once you have this table drawn, and you may want to pause the video now to do that if you're going to draw it this way. So now, once you've got this table drawn, what you essentially need to do is you need to fill in your extract boxes. And you need to do that using detail or information from the annotation slide. And as I said, I've given you 3 different things. So you might choose for this one to be supernatural. You might choose for this one to be disbelief. Oh, forgot the E. And then you might want to have terrifying. It doesn't matter which order you do it in, but basically I'm going to go back to the annotation slide so you can see what we produced. And what you need to do is you need to have these 3 boxes, or if you're doing this, you need to have these 3 boxes all completed before you move on to the next part of this video. So here are the annotations. Pause the video while you fill in your 3 extract boxes now. Okay, so your 3 extract boxes should now be complete. So what we can do is we can get a nice little green, and we can put little ticks because you should have completed these 3 boxes, or if you do your plan like this, you should have completed these 3 boxes. Now, in terms of an introduction and a conclusion, which as you can see I've got here and here, or if you're in this plan, your intro is here, your conclusion is here. I've kind of linked, essentially the way I like to think about an introduction is you want to introduce 3 key arguments. So one thing I can say about all the ghosts is that they are all presented as supernatural. At the end of the day, they're ghosts. I also think that lots of the ghosts are presented as wise and insightful, and I think we see that a lot more than we necessarily see them being not believed in. And then terrifying is definitely my final kind of argument. So in my introduction, I will mention these 3 things. These are the 3 things that I believe Dickens is trying to present the ghosts as in particular. As you can see here, my keywords from the question and synonyms, I've got the word ghosts, I've got spectre, shade, spirit, apparition, phantom, all different words I can use for ghost. And then my conclusion. So in conclusion, Dickens presents the ghosts in the novella as, and then I would pick one. So if there is something in your head that you think, right, this is the main thing that Dickens wants to present the ghosts as. He wants to present them as supernatural. He wants to present them as terrifying. All the ghosts are terrifying. If that is what you believe, then you need to make sure that you then talk about that in your conclusion. If you're thinking, wait, miss, I don't think that any of these 3 things you've written here are how Dickens tries to present the ghosts overall, then you need to change one of these things so that it fits with what you're arguing. There is no point in you saying, these are the 3 ways Dickens presents ghosts, and then at the end say, in conclusion, Dickens presents them as this totally different thing that you've not mentioned. Okay? So, You now need to have your introduction and your conclusion completed, so please pause the video to complete that now. Okay, wonderful. So, big ticks, these 2 boxes are now completed. Now what you need to do is we need to think about elsewhere. Now this question is quite nice because it's given us an extract, and the extract, as we saw, is all about Marley. Okay? Which means we've got 3 more elsewheres to talk about, and there are 3 more ghosts. We could talk about the ghost of Christmas past, we could talk about the ghost of Christmas present, we could talk about the ghost of Christmas yet to come. You could also maybe choose to, instead of doing your argument like taking it ghost by ghost, you might choose to talk about how the ghost of Christmas past is presented as quite supernatural. I'd say aside the ghost of Christmas past and yet to come are both particularly supernatural in appearance. When it comes to the ghost of Christmas present, you might choose to talk about him being wise or insightful. And with the ghost of Christmas yet to come, this is where you might hit that terrifying. Or you might say, wait a second, the ghost of Christmas past is quite wise and insightful, and you might choose to do it more themed. At the end of the day, I want you to kind of plan this the way that you want to. I don't want to dictate how to plan, because by this point you've already done 2 exam questions. You've planned them in class with your teachers, and really we need to get to a point where you're kind of planning for yourself. So you might choose to take it ghost by ghost, and you could talk about the ghost of Christmas past being supernatural, ghost of Christmas present being wise and terrifying. You might want to take a more thematic approach and talk about the ghosts being supernatural, and you might talk about past and yet to come. You might talk about wise and insightful and talk about past and present. You might talk about terrifying and just talk about the ghost of Christmas yet to come. You might mention other things about Marley, but just not from that extract. It's entirely your choice. So what I need you to do is to take a couple of seconds to decide how you're going to approach this. Are you going to take it ghost by ghost, or are you going to take a more thematic approach? Because it will impact how you plan your grid. So how you fill in your planning grid, it will impact that. Pause the video to make that decision now. Okay, so to kind of prove that you've made that decision, what you should have is this kind of heading written. Okay, you should have a heading that either reads Elsewhere Ghost of Christmas Past, or Elsewhere Supernatural, Elsewhere Ghost of Christmas Present, or Elsewhere Wise and Insightful. So you need to have one of these choices written as a heading for your box. Now, I can't plan for every outcome. I can't guess that you're going to take it ghost by ghost, or guess that you're going to take it thematically. What I will do, however, or what I am doing, is I'm giving you an extract. 1 per ghost. Okay, now that's important. I'm giving you an extract, 1 per ghost, which means that if you're doing it this way, where you're looking at the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas yet to come, these extracts are going to be really useful. If you're really trying to push yourself and you're taking it thematically and looking at ghosts being supernatural, ghosts being wise, ghosts being terrifying, you might need slightly larger extracts. Now, what you need to do, and this is really important, I've mentioned it before, but I will keep mentioning it until I'm sure you've got it. What you need to be doing is opening up this. Christmas Carol can be found online. All you need to do is Google the Project Gutenberg ebook of Christmas Carol, and it will come up. You don't even need to Google that. You could Google A Christmas Carol full text online, and this will be the first link. If we go back, see, I Googled A Christmas Carol full text. This is the first extract. Now, obviously this is the whole book, but you can use the Control F function, as I've done, to search things like Ghost of Christmas Yet, which takes me straight to when Scrooge is introduced to the ghost, so I can read that part of the stave. I can also search Ghost of Christmas Past, and I can see this is where he's introduced to the Ghost of Christmas Past, and I can look. Now, obviously in the exam you don't have the text, but I want this plan to be as good a quality as it can be, and part of that means that you need to kind of make sure you've got really good quotes to go with it. If you're sitting there thinking, I can remember some quotes, or I can at least remember bits of the text or bits of the story that I want to use, then do that, that's fine. But if you're really struggling, you can either use the extracts that I'm providing here or look for yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read each of these extracts. I'm not going to do any annotation. That is your job. You need to follow along as I'm reading and maybe jot down quotes that you want to use about each of the ghosts. And you need to think about what those quotes are telling you. And by the end of me reading these extracts, you need to have your boxes complete. So this is the extract about the Ghost of Christmas Past. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man, viewed through some supernatural medium which gave him the appearance of having receded from view and being diminished to a child's portions. Its hair, which hung about its neck and down its back, was white as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it, and the tenderest bloom was on the skin. The arms were very long and muscular, the hands the same, as if its hold were of uncommon strength. Its legs and feet, most delicately formed, were, like those upper members, bare. It wore a tunic of the purest white, and round its waist was bound a lustrous belt, the sheen of which was beautiful. It held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand, and in singular contradiction of that wintry emblem had its dress trimmed with summer flowers. But the strangest thing about it was that from the crown of its head there sprung a bright clear jet of light by which all was made visible, and which was doubtless the occasion of its using, in its duller moments, a great extinguisher for a cap which it now held under its arm. So pause the video to get yourself the quotes that you're going to use. Okay, and remember we want maybe 1 or 2 quotes for each of our boxes. So what you now need to be doing, or what you should now have done, is that you should now have completed this box of your plan. So if you're doing it where you're taking it ghost by ghost, this is where this box needs to be completed. If you're looking elsewhere, and you're maybe doing the supernatural as your argument, or as your point for this paragraph, then feel free to find your evidence. Make sure you're including you need to include a quote, any kind of technique, or if not, the word class of a particular word. And you also then need to have what that tells us. Okay, so your kind of what, how, why needs to go in here. Remember, you want 2 or 3 quotes. You don't just want to rely on one. You want to have a couple to really back up your argument. Okay, pause the video to make sure you've got that box complete. Okay, and next we're looking at the Ghost of Christmas Present. So remember, again, I will remind you, this is just where the ghost is introduced. You may want to look elsewhere. You may want to look at the text yourself. You may have an idea of what you want to talk about already, and in that case you might just use references rather than quotes. "Come in," exclaimed the ghost. "Come in and know me better, man." Scrooge entered timidly and hung his head before this spirit. He was not the dogged Scrooge he had been, and though the spirit's eyes were clear and kind, he did not like to meet them. "I am the Ghost of Christmas Present," said Spirit. "Look upon me." Scrooge reverently did so. It was clothed in one simple green robe or mantle, bordered with white fur. This garment hung so loosely on the figure that its capacious breast was bare, as if disdaining to be warded or concealed by any artifice. Its feet, observable beneath the ample folds of the garment, were also bare, and on its head it wore no other covering than a holly wreath, set here and there with shining icicles. Its dark brown curls were long and free as its genial face, its sparkling eye, its open hand, its cheery voice, its unconstrained demeanour, and its joyful air. Girdled around its middle was an antique scabbard, but no sword was in it, and the ancient sheath was eaten up with rust. So again, you can maybe pick quotes from this. You may choose to look elsewhere in the novel, or you may have your own references. But essentially, you now need to be completing this box in whatever way you choose. Pause the video while you complete this. Okay, and then finally, again, this is just the introduction of the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, so if you're taking it ghost by ghost, this might be useful. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the very air through which this spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and misery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment that concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible, save one outstretched hand. But for all this, it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night and separate it from the darkness by which it was surrounded. He felt that it was tall and stately when it came beside him, and that its mysterious presence filled him with a solemn dread. He knew no more, for the spirit neither spoke nor moved. "I am in the presence of the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come," said Scrooge. The spirit answered not, but pointed onward with its hand. "You are about to show me shadows of things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us," Scrooge pursued. "Is that so, spirit?" The upper portion of the garment was contracted for an instant in its folds, as if the spirit had inclined its head. That was the only answer he received. Okay, so again, pausing the video, and you're going to need to go back, and you should now have completed this box, so you need to complete this box in whatever way you are choosing to do it, be that you're doing thematically or ghost by ghost. That is the box that you need to be completing. So that should mean that by the time that box is completed, your plan is totally complete and you are ready to write your answer next lesson. Well done for all of your hard work, guys. Make sure your plan is good to go, because you will be writing a full answer next lesson.